But then again, I'm a salesperson and I know that most of our biggest customers, like 80% of them, they're still on data center, right? No, there are a lot of agreements like that. The Atlassian doesn't want to create conflicts of interest. And just the whole idea that the marketplace exists, that there are more companies that kind of need Atlassian to prosper in order to prosper themselves, that kind of creates the opposite of conflicts of interest, the alignment of interests, right? They are the victims of their own success, right? But also, I guess, if you could play it smart, give some of those responsibilities like higher management, then sure, maybe you will manage to grow it. My name is Gabriel. I've been working in the Atlassian ecosystem for like 7 years now, and it was basically my first serious job. Before I joined the Atlassian ecosystem, my first ever job was, I started a business with my friend, and I was mostly working things related to sales, talking with our customers, going into conferences, and it was in the automotive industry. So we actually did rims for high-end cars, and that was the first job that I ever had. But the thing is, I didn't like it because I'm not really into cars, So I was going to like conferences and, talking about our company and meeting all of those people from the business. And they were so passionate about cars and stuff like that, and I wasn't. And for example, I needed to read up and learn what is aquaplaning. And I had to like learn about it. But you go to a conference and you meet someone that just knows everything about it because it's his passion. So I knew that, okay, I shouldn't work in this industry because I don't feel it. I want to work in IT because this is where my passion is. So I started looking around for a job, and I ended up at the company called Software Plant, which was the original creator of Big Picture, so one of the biggest apps on the Atlassian marketplace. And I joined the company back when it was like around 50 people. It was a small startup from Warsaw, and I stayed there until we were like about 250 people, and we got acquired by Apwide. Then I left for some time, and I worked for Chris Cook in Old Street Solutions. We did some crazy stuff together. I was working as a brand lead, and we did some crazy marketing stunts. I dressed up as a T-Rex for the Atlassian team 2022, I think, I believe it was 2022. And then I came back to Apwide for a while. Then I created my own company, jumped around for a bit, and now I'm very happily working at Apwide with David Berklas, and I'm a key account manager. But also, it's a small startup again, so I learned from my experience that I love working at those smaller companies where you can wear all the different hats and help out in different areas of the business, instead of when I was working at Apwide, which was a huge corporation, and I just had my very specific role, and there was a lot of silos and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a bit about my background.
What's your primary role right now?
So I am a key account manager. I mostly work with our biggest customers just to make sure that we retain those relationships. But I'm also dipping into partner management. So I'm working with partners because, if you stay in the ecosystem for so long, you travel to all those conferences, you have some friends, you have it's quite a huge network in all those companies. So I'm mostly doing partner relations and key account management, just taking those relationships with the biggest customers.
Do you work within Jira directly, Confluence, any of those apps, like on a daily basis, implementing solutions or developing apps or anything along those lines?
Developing apps, not at all. But I do work in Jira because, so my whole experience, as I said, I worked in the Atlassian ecosystem for like 7 years, but all of this time was spent working for vendors. So I was mostly working with apps, helping, so explaining to customers how do they work, where can we improve like specific things in Jira. And I kind of always had to know about Jira limitations and its benefits. But to be honest, I never really worked that strongly in Jira itself. The most experience I had with Jira Service Management, and I'm currently even setting up a partner portal for Apwide. So I'm kind of Yes, and Confluence especially. Yeah, sure, of course. I was creating a lot of documents and working in that, but I wasn't really a Jira admin any of the time, so I'm not that really technical with Jira. But yeah, of course, I dabble. I like to say that.
I'm curious what teams you work with. So as a partner manager, you're working with like those customers directly. Do those end up being enterprise organizations? Are they ever smaller companies, like maybe 10, 20 people?
To be honest, I had experience all over the board. So especially when I was working at Apwide, and this is something that I learned is very crucial when you work in such an. I mean, okay, let's not generalize. It's just the fact that when we are working, when the whole company basically has their revenue based around the Atlassian marketplace, and you sell an app on that platform, you learn quickly that okay, if you help out, because when you are a salesperson, there is a lot of like prioritization of customers based on, for example, revenue, right? Normally, you would assume that okay, I will spend more time working and catering to this customer because it's like a 2,000 user instance, so it will be a lot of money, and this customer is basically 20 users, so it's less than I make in an hour, so that doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
But what turns out is that okay, maybe the smaller customer is worth a lot less money, but he can still leave you a bad review on the Atlassian marketplace. And if your whole business is the Atlassian marketplace, that 4-star rating is your bread and butter. You need to have it. And so in the end, I ended up working with customers all across the board. I did big picture implementations at Netflix, but I also did it for like super small companies with like 10 developers. And to be honest, I learned that a lot of the time the setup is very similar. It's just the scale that changes.
Right. Yeah, that
And
totally makes
introduce.
sense from like a perspective of you need good reviews. The same company could leave you a bad review, small or big. But what if they're coming to you with like a feature request, like, hey, we would love to use this app. We have 2,000 employees that would pay for this, but we
Mhm.
require this one little feature to be built. Is that something that happens often from those enterprise organizations?
Uh, I mean, yes, I did some custom development in the time. But usually one customer will still not be enough. When we're talking about a company on such a scale as, for example, Big Picture, where it's so you have like 100 developers working in research and development, and even when it's one huge customer requesting a feature, it may not be sustainable to just work this way, because in the end you need to think about what's best for the product long term. Even though it's a big customer and he wants this specific feature, maybe he can wait. I mean, in the end, we gather feedback from all of the customers. We put it on. We kind of we gather feedback, and then we decide what makes sense and what doesn't. I wouldn't say that the size of the customer really matters. I mean, of course, yes. If a customer, if I don't know, if a customer from the top of Fortune 500 list comes by and he says that he needs this feature, it will probably generate more noise than a super tiny customer saying that we are missing a feature. But that also mostly comes from their understanding. Like if it's a huge customer, then usually the people are working on a they have a different understanding. You could say that if they really think that this feature is required, then maybe it actually is, versus a super small company that may have it may be a startup of people that, but what I'm trying to say, in the end, it's not based around the size of the customer. You really need to look at it from the like product management perspective. What works long term, what makes sense, what doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. In your role as an account manager, what is a couple of key things that requires you to keep a customer happy?
Couple things that requires me to keep a customer happy. Well, can you rephrase the question? I don't quite get the
Yeah,
question.
like what do you do to
What do
say,
I
so
do to make?
you're working
Okay,
with several companies,
okay, I get
small,
it. I get it.
large. What are the primary things that you do to keep them happy with your solutions?
Right. So I think the biggest thing is, I mean, what I learned is that the role of an account manager is essentially you're the point of contact for the customer with the rest of the company, right? And especially if you work in IT, let's be real, people that are drawn to IT are not really uh, extroverted most of the time, right? They need some kind of buffer to talk with the customer. Maybe the customer is not very happy. He needs someone to relay his grievances to, and you're this buffer between the developer and the customer. So you will join the call. You will assure him that that we're working on fixing your issues or something like that, and you just kind of gather the feedback. And yeah, that was what I would say, you're kind of the buffer, the point of contact between the rest of the company and the customer. And in the end, the customer just wants to feel that he's being taken care of, that he's being heard, that his feedback is actually valued, and it is actually. It's just a matter of making him understand that it is, because if a customer puts in a ticket and it will be taken in as a feature request, it will be analyzed in later on. This will happen, but and maybe in the future AI can replace this kind of processes, but you always will need another person to kind of smile with, to give him a handshake when you actually meet on one of the conferences. And I guess account management is this kind of the last stance of humanity in IT, right? You need some kind of a human connection there.
Yeah,
Does this
there's
make
some things
sense
that
as an answer?
yeah, no, there's definitely some things that like AI can't do. It can't replicate a human touch, like
Right.
at least not yet. We want, we as people, we want to buy from people. We don't want to buy from a company or an organization. We want to feel like the product is going to work for us. We're valued at the company that we're working with. And having that approach totally makes sense. Having someone to complain to if you have some problems in your environment, listen to if you're wanting some features requested, and all of that's kind of more reactive. So a client or a customer reaches out to you, right? They express their problems or issues or gratitude in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you do that's proactive, like before they even reach out, that might, help them feel like they're valued, on top of just being reactive?
Well, the most important thing is that, generally speaking, the thing about Atlassian Marketplace and companies that make their money as a vendor is that a lot of the purchases, they kind of come and go by themselves, right? Or by resellers or partners, for example, right? But a lot of the times the company will just find out that, okay, we need a tool to organize our issues in an Excel format. They would research what's available on the market. They'll find the best app. They'll download it, install it, and now you have a new customer, right? But now you don't know, for example, okay, and then 8 months pass, and then you're 4 months until the renewal, and you don't actually know if the customer is enjoying the app, if he's using the app. Okay, maybe you have some
They just forgot
analytics,
to
but
uninstall it.
yeah, but yes, exactly. And maybe you have some analytics, but that's assuming that they are not on premise. And you don't actually know what's going on. If they're happy, if they're not happy, if they will have some kind of like 100% blocker, some huge issue, they will write a ticket. But most of the time, you don't know what's happening, right? So I guess the whole idea is to just proactively try to reach out to all of those customers and kind of build some kind of a relationship, right? And they actually love it, because when a salesperson, I mean, okay, I didn't work as a salesperson technically, but it doesn't matter. Usually when someone sees account manager, in his eyes, it's a salesperson, right? If someone reaches out to you and he's like, hey, let's talk for 15 minutes, you immediately filter it out. You immediately see, okay, salesperson wants to sell me something, right? But in the end, you really need to reach out being like, hey, I don't want to sell you anything. I just want to talk with you. See if there is anything that we can help you with. Maybe that there are some tips or custom or different things related to implementation that I can help you with. Or maybe if it's a super complicated tool like Big Picture was, I would also be my role was kind of to be managing resources of the company for them. So we have like technical consultants. So I would reach out to someone and be like, hey, if you have any issues at all, I will bring you my best technical consultant on a call, and he will like help you configure everything, get more benefits from using apps. So I guess it's just you reach out proactively and just say, hey, let's talk. Let's see if I can help you with anything. We want to know how you're using the tool, if there is any feedback. And usually from those conversations, a lot of good can happen, because in the end, just pushing something down someone's throat as a sales tactic, it work? Maybe it worked in the 90s, but it doesn't really work now. But if you join a call, if you talk with them for a moment, you will see what they need, And at this point, you're just, responding to their own needs instead of, trying to create some kind of need.
Yeah, that's definitely tough because I get probably, 5 to 10 people reaching out to me saying, hey, let's jump on a call. Do you want this kind of service? Getting cold emails, LinkedIn messages. And, if I jumped on a call with every one of them, I wouldn't have any time to work. So
Right.
it's really, sometimes I do, most of the time I don't. Obviously, oftentimes it's a cold pitch, so you don't even need or use the product. Sometimes you are using the product, but like, I don't know if it's going to be worth my time to jump on and speak to the rep about some of the problems I might have had or some great use cases that I've had out of the tool. So yeah, definitely a challenge there to find people that are willing to talk to you and being able to work with them and actually helping them and understanding and learning from them on how they're using your product. So
yeah, but in the end, you just need to make them realize what you're reaching out for, right? Because, okay, sometimes, I've learned that honesty is the most important thing here. If you're trying to beat around the bush and trying to make it look like it's this different, in the end, if the customer feels like, okay, why am I even joining this call? What does he want from me? At this point, you're probably not going to get him. If you want to sell something, just be straight. Just approach someone and be like, hey, I want to sell you this, but look, I really think that you will like it because it really fits your role, and I worked with people like yourself in the past. So if you just give me 15 minutes of your time, maybe you will save some money or time in the future. You will love it, right? This is something that you would probably speak to you a bit more, right? Because in the end,
that works, that honest approach. But you also mentioned, like, I think it'll help your role, your company in, this way. That requires personalization, which a lot of people use, like those mass tools that don't have much personalization at all, which I think is kind of part of the problem as well. Because if you get a bunch of cold, inbound messages that are super generic and you could tell nobody took the time to look at your LinkedIn profile to see what your company does, how they do it, if you'll actually benefit from what they're selling. But, it's obviously way easier than, doing that and reaching out, sending a personalized message.
Yeah, and I think that actually it's an interesting subject, because I think the thing that's really kind of because I was basically 18 when I joined Big Picture. I was just starting my whole career. I'm very young, and I think that the thing that kind of shaped me and my understanding of sales is that and when I joined Big Picture, again, it was a 50 people organization at that time. Me and a couple people that joined at the same time, we were just kind of creating a new sales team from scratch. And Chris Cook actually was he was a consultant that was like hired by Big Picture to help them create this new sales team from scratch. And we were like doing the processes from nothing, essentially, and learning as we went. And after a while, we understood that, okay, cold outreach in this case is a complete waste of time, because if you try to, not for every single solution out there, but we were selling Big Picture, which was like a huge platform for project portfolio management. And we learned that, okay, if someone is to actually try out Big Picture and install something like that, he is probably already needs to be on the path of, like, he already understood that, okay, we need to do some changes in how we manage projects. It's not something that you will start up with a LinkedIn message, right? I mean, yeah, sure, maybe if you meet someone on a conference and then you will start talking 2 years into the future, but generally speaking, you will not sell this from just cold outreach, because there already needs to be some kind of a movement inside the company, understanding that, okay, we need to do some changes here. So this kind of shaped me into this approach of kind of demand generation, and then just kind of sell it through marketing. And this is why I also kind of, apart from just being an account manager, when I joined Allstreet, I kind of dabbled into marketing a bit as well. And my role technically was a brand lead. So we kind of wanted to be heard, be seen in the space, and the customers will come. Just cold outreach, it's kind of probably time to leave this in the past. But on the other hand, when you have a tool that can be used by basically everyone in the organization, and just any organizations can probably benefit from it, then maybe some cold outreach is a good idea. It's an approach, but generally, I think that as the time goes, we should probably move on from doing cold calling and reaching out to people and, hey, can I have 15 minutes of your time, into creating more of a space where people will find what they need.
Yeah, that's a great point. You mentioned earlier that you worked for Old Street Solutions.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And they developed by far my favorite custom charts plugin
Custom
for
charts.
Jira,
Yeah.
the one that I use pretty much with every client that I work with anytime that they need reporting.
Now it's a Tempo product.
Yeah, now it's a Tempo product. I'm curious how that happened and why it was sold to Tempo. Was it just just happened to be that way and they liked the product and wanted to acquire it, or was there some other reason behind it?
I mean, that's there are things that really talk about openly, but let's just say that it was a whole process. That there are a lot of things happening at the same time, in terms of where All Street was going, and yeah, at some point, that it wasn't an easy decision, right? It was
Sounds
a
like there was
whole
something happened that's not shared
not
with the
for
public.
not for public knowledge, I guess. But yeah, I mean, okay, let's let me dodge this question this way. Uh, I worked at both Big Picture and All Street, and those are two companies that ended up selling out to huge enterprises at some point. And in both cases, when I spoke with the CEO of those companies 3 months before the acquisition, they were still saying, "No, I will never sell my baby. This is my
Wow.
baby. I will never do it. Never. I will not." And and then the reality check comes in, and you have to cash it.
So it sounds like the number was just too good to pass up.
And that's what I would like to think.
That makes
Um,
sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Were those CEOs like all in and like, they loved what they did, or did they feel any kind of burnout and were kind of done at some point?
Well, okay, let's this is a more interesting subject to touch upon, especially that as I told you, my whole experience in the Atlassian ecosystem is from the perspective of a vendor, and generally talking about the Atlassian marketplace and those companies that create products there. It's a very interesting subject because from what I've seen, a lot of those companies, well, I wouldn't say majority or all of them, but a lot of them go through the same process of two developers lock themselves in the basement for a week or two. They create an app because they had an idea. They release it on the marketplace. Then they sell it to one customer, then two customers. Then suddenly they have enough to be seen on the marketplace. And now they sold it to 30 customers. Now they hire another developer. And now, after a while, they have 15 people helping them develop the product, and they keep selling and selling. And at some point, they realize, okay, maybe we need to hire HR because we have 15 people. Now we probably would need someone for sales. Now let's hire someone that manages partners. And now suddenly you have an organization, but you didn't start thinking about creating an organization. You started just creating an app, right? So now you have two people that used to be developers, great developers, create an amazing app, had great ideas, but now they are fitting in the role of a CEO and running a company. And that's a whole different skill set, right? The question that will verify it is, first of all, and at some point you need to either start giving away some of those responsibilities to other people. Maybe you need to hire management basically for yourself, or you end up trying to, or you sell it to one of the enterprises that love to buy those kind of companies that just started from suddenly and didn't prepare for it, or you try to take all of that baggage onto your back and you grow the company until it's 200 people, and at some point you just wake up, your back hurts, and you just realize you cannot do it any longer, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand that. I think that's a part of every CEO's journey, every, product owner, every business owner. Like I wake up, 2 to 3 times a week and I'm like, what am I doing? I should just sell everything and leave it. But then, those every other day I wake up, I'm like, man, I'm super happy to be doing what I'm doing now, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. So it's a weird balance of like, yes, you're going to have those times where you don't like it, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to do anything else. Like if I didn't have this, what would I be doing? So I'm just curious kind of what the thought process of, those CEOs that kind of sell their product that they've created, that they've put
Yeah,
into the Click
let me tell you.
marketplace.
Let me ask you a question. So when you were starting out, did you start from like the perspective of, hey, I want to run a company, I want to create my own company with my own branding and see it the logo of my
Yeah,
company
I
somewhere
did.
on a Yeah, you did,
I did.
right? And
Yeah.
some of them don't. They started out being like, hey, I have an idea for a product. I'm passionate about product, about like coding and development, and let us fill in this gap that we feel that there needs to be a product, right? And
Yeah.
they create it, and at some point they feel overburdened by their own success. They are the victims of their own success, right? But also, I guess if you could play it smart, give some of those responsibilities like higher management, then sure, maybe you will manage to grow it. But yeah, I think that's the biggest problem. If you started out
Right.
as, hey, I want to lead a business, and then you succeeded, then amazing, man. Then you will wake up. Maybe sometimes you will be like, hey, this is a lot, but anyway, you're doing what you love. And some
Yeah.
people in the ecosystem, I noticed they start product first, and they are not prepared for their own success, right? Which
Yeah,
is
that
a
totally
cute
makes
story.
sense.
Like there are no victims here. In the end, they
Yeah.
earn a lot of money, and they had
I feel
an
like
adventure.
that's
I'm not.
majority of apps too, right? Like not every big app, but like so many products out there that you've used in the past got sold to some big organization and they, screwed up the app itself and it's too expensive. It's doesn't have the features that you want anymore. And you end up finding a new solution that a new developer's created. And then the cycle kind of repeats and it just keeps going and going. Yeah, it's very interesting how that happens. But even like if you think about Jira, right? Everybody loved
Okay.
Jira. It was cheap. It was affordable. It's a great tool for developers, for service management. Now it's
Yeah,
expensive. A lot of the features that people want aren't there. And it's kind of feel like it's becoming one of those platforms and products that people are trying to look for an alternative for.
but they
Whereas
cannot
before it
find it.
was the alternative, right? Why do you think
What?
that happens with those kinds of organizations?
I mean, first of all, in terms of Jira, I I had a lot of conversations like that, especially to be honest. The biggest issue is probably for that kind of really reboots this whole conversation of, hey, let's look for alternatives. I would say is the migration to cloud, and okay, I don't want to throw out names of the companies out there, but I spoke with a lot of companies that wanted to move to renew their license for data center Jira, and they were like huge organizations, and Atlassian told them, okay, we will not sell you this license unless you will join
Really?
us for a 1 week long workshop where we will try to convince you that you need to move to cloud,
What?
right? Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
did not know that was a thing. That's crazy.
I can tell you what was the company, but off the
That
off the
sounds like
record.
someone selling you a timeshare or something.
Yes, exactly. I can tell you the name of the company, but when we are off the camera.
Yeah.
But yeah, I talked with a couple of organizations that kind of encountered this wall. Mm, but in the end, it was they started looking for alternatives. They did their research, and they just found that no product out there can really match the feature set of
Mhm.
Jira. You cannot do those things,
Did they end up
especially.
using cloud or data center?
No, they ended up joining those the meet the 1 week long workshops, and they bought
So did
the
they end
data
up going to
center.
cloud
Yeah,
or did
no,
they
they
renew?
ended up going to
Okay.
with the data center
Okay.
license. So
So
they
that
had
didn't
to
work.
join a 1 week long workshop, and where Atlassian tried to convince them that. And I also, I went to Barcelona, for example, to the team in Barcelona, and I met a lot of developers, for example, that kind of arrived and they wanted to learn something, but they found that everything is centered around cloud. And same with salespeople that I talk with. They are like, okay, cool. It's another conference that I'm going to, and I'm hearing from the stage, hey, everyone is cloud. Cloud is amazing. We're moving to cloud. And like, I don't have anything against cloud. But then again, I'm a salesperson, and I know that most of our biggest customers, like 80% of them, they're still on data center, right?
Mhm.
And especially organizations that kind of, I don't know,
A lot,
value.
80%. Wow.
Sorry?
80% is a lot. I thought it'd be a lot less than that.
I mean, I'm not saying that that for a company that sells that generally 80% of your user base will be data center, but as I said, I know a lot of people that are working as account managers or salespeople, and if they are working with those huge accounts and closing those deals, a lot of the time when there is a huge deal on the horizon and there is a lot of money to be made, it's a data center deal, right?
Right. Do you see any alternative products that kind of do what Jira does, but cheaper on-prem that people are slowly trying to use, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't?
I mean, it depends what kind of needs are you trying to fulfill, because Jira is very flexible, and you can take it from me as a person that worked for vendors, so people that so generally my whole story is transforming Jira into things that it wasn't even initially intended for, right? So it's a very flexible tool.
That's half of what we do at Grid.io. Essentially, we
Right.
build out something
Exactly.
that Jira wasn't intended to do, but does very well.
Yeah, that's the point. And if you are trying to if you're talking about this flexibility, no, there's definitely no tool out there that will allow you to have that. If you want something very specific, then yes, probably there are some tools out there. But
we're just waiting for that developer to lock himself in a basement for 2 weeks and create an alternative one of these days.
Jira in 2 weeks, man, I want to meet that developer. I want to work for him. I will be his salesperson.
With AI, I wouldn't be surprised if we're pretty close to that, because it could do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. And if you're building a product with the feature set of someone who needs a very specific feature set that Jira has, but maybe doesn't need everything else that Jira offers, at some point it'll be possible. It's just a matter of how long will that take, and who's going to be able to do it.
Yes, but there is also another side of this coin, right? Because generally I would say that there is a lot of movement in the industry generally, especially in terms of IT and product development, where maybe 15 years ago, there was this approach of best of the sort, that you had the best product for everything. But now there is a lot of this push into integration and into having a single pane of glass approach to have everything in one place. This is why I think Jira is such a big player on the market, because it really allows you to put a lot of different things in one place. I mean, look at Apwide, for example. We now created an app that is for code guys called Booking for Jira. And to be honest, being completely honest with it, and on my heart, it's not a very innovative product to do booking of assets in your organization. The whole innovation comes from it allows you to have everything connected within Jira, right? And it also came from the idea of, hey, we had our customers using our products that were intended for something completely different to do exactly this use case that we just developed a new app for. And this is only because, again, it's one of the Lego pieces of creating the single pane of glass approach to have everything in one place. And this was the thing about when I joined Big Picture and I learned what Jira even is, I already learned it from the perspective of, hey, we are creating a product for Jira because people love to have everything in Jira. So we created an attachment that allows you to have Microsoft project essentially in Jira with Jira issues and with everything, using Jira as a kind of data repository, the single source of truth. So I think that as long as this idea kind of sustains itself, I don't think there will be a lot
of. You did just mention that the solution that your company provides is relatively simple. Is there a fear, or even is there ever a question of why doesn't Atlassian just implement something similar, and we're kind of irrelevant at that point?
I mean, that's the point. It's not that simple it's simple from the user perspective, right? And that's also something that I learned with all of those different products. Like you mentioned custom charts, for example, by Allstreet Solutions, or Big Picture itself. Big Picture, maybe it was a huge product, but a lot of those apps, they seem simple. It does just one thing or a couple of things. It just creates a beautiful report or allows you to, book something. And technically, those are very simple products. The complexity comes from, again, integrating with a system like Jira. Because when I was still new to the ecosystem, I kept asking myself, why is Jira so unstable? In the end, it's just an Excel with extra steps, right? It's just a simple tool where you put the number in one place and it displays it in another place. Or maybe it takes values from two different places, adds them together and displays it in another place. In the end, it's just an Excel with extra steps. But, the complexity comes from all of those integrations. And with adding all those different tools that allow you to kind of use that information, it all comes It all comes down to this
Does
complexity. Right?
Atlassian, I know they acquire other companies, right? Do they acquire an application on their marketplace? Has that ever happened in the past?
Did Atlassian acquire an app from the marketplace? I I don't know. I don't think so. Like Trello comes to mind, but wasn't really on the
Yeah, they
marketplace,
acquire
right?
this separate product, right? There's Loom, there's
Yeah, yeah.
Confluence, there's others, I don't know if they acquired No, they built Confluence, but there's other products, Data Manager recently. But the products inside of their app store, I'm curious if they've ever acquired a company there.
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I don't think so. There are a lot of things. Like, for example, Atlassian has an agreement that they will not hire people from the companies that are, for example, partnered with them.
Oh, I see.
Anyhow, like, for example, from vendors or resellers. And they don't want to create kind of.
Does that go both ways?
Does that go both ways? Do people? No, that doesn't go both ways.
So people poach
Partners.
people from Atlassian, but not the other way around.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Interesting.
And to be honest, Atlassian doesn't pay though that competitively. So
Well, then,
if you work for Atlassian and a partner poaches you, then you probably will double your income. But
wow.
yeah, no, there are a lot of agreements like that. The Atlassian doesn't want to create conflicts of interest, and just the whole idea that the marketplace exists, that there are more companies that kind of need Atlassian to prosper in order to prosper themselves. That kind of creates the opposite of conflicts of interest, the alignment of interests, right? So I think they want it to go this way. They don't want to steal products from the ideas, for example, from the marketplace. It was always there. It was always out there. For example, custom charts itself, right? It's not a unique feature because okay.
It's just a better way of doing something.
It's just a better way of doing something. It's even like you have reports in Jira. We just created an app that initially was just a color picker for them because you couldn't have custom colors, and then it ended up being just expanding in the feature set. But in the end, it's just the same feature that was already there. So we were wondering if they will fix their reporting finally after all those years and we will just go out of business. They still didn't. They work slow.
Do you think they're not doing it on purpose because of those applications? Because they know the solution is there and they don't want to take over that, marketplace experience that they, a lot of other companies have built?
I think so. It wouldn't be good press if they did kill a
but
company.
At the same time, it's not good press that they don't, right? I hear so many complaints that why is the Atlassian reporting so basic and, unusable, essentially. If you want to do pretty much anything reporting wise in Atlassian, you have to have a plugin. It's pretty much like every company I've worked with, anything remotely complex, even, slightly more basic than what's out of box, you have to get a third-party plugin.
Yes, but, it's a complicated issue, but I think that, again, it all comes down to this alignment of interests. It works out better for them to not create this idea in people's mind that it's not beneficial to create an app for the marketplace, right? Because in the end, Atlassian will create something, will just steal your idea and implement it, and you'll be out of business. So I think it's just, it comes down to this alignment of interests. You create the marketplace, the whole ecosystem, and now you have 70 different companies or 700 or 1,000 companies that basically all rely on Atlassian surviving for them to survive, right? So I think... Okay, sorry, I got a call. So we are close to our deadline. I will have to finish in a couple of minutes. So
yeah, no worries. Well, I appreciate you jumping on and having the conversation. It's been great. Where can people get your apps? I'm guessing just on the Atlassian marketplace. Is there any website or material on YouTube or LinkedIn that they could reference as well?
In terms of Apwide, yes, you're talking about Apwide. Okay, so generally the biggest thing that I would love to promote with Apwide is that we are competing in CodeGeist this year. CodeGeist is this Atlassian hackathon where you develop an app in 1 month, and we created Booking for Jira, essentially a product that kind of came because Apwide generally we specialize in this app that allows you to work with environments, development environments, testing environments, manage them, schedule them, book them. And a lot of our customers used our tool and our timelines for booking things that were not even related to testing environments. Like they started out with devices for testing, Because, for example, you will have like one Android phone or one iOS device in the company for testing purposes, and they used our timelines to book them. And it kind of developed into booking different things, even conference rooms, company vehicles and stuff like that. So we had a lot of requests for features like that. So we decided to develop it as a separate app for code guys. And we created an amazingly creative, engaging video, because this was one of my biggest passions. And apart from just doing sales and account management, I loved helping out marketing teams doing some crazy viral stunts. And we created a very fun video where I had to do an acrobatic stunt and jump across the table for one of the scenes, and I almost broke myself in half. So highly encourage you guys to check out the video on YouTube of our newest app, Booking for Jira by Apwide.
Booking for Jira by Apwide. All right, I haven't even seen it, so I'll have to check that out.
Please do. It's a great video.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Gabriel. It's been great having you on, and hopefully we'll hear from you again soon.